Okay, let's give it a minute for our folks to join. They are coming in from our welcome remarks. So welcome everyone. Let's see in the chat who's already here in the room. Nice. Great. Okay. So hello everyone and welcome to Digital Front Door Day, our second session of the day of many that we have planned. Liat here from Hyro. I'm thrilled to be your session host. Thanks for joining. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to use the chat, which I'll be moderating. And we kick off the day with our opening keynote panel moderated by John Freedman, principal and partner from Chartis, a healthcare consulting firm focused on consumer access and digital transformation. My awesome panelists, for those who don't know you, please introduce yourselves and your roles. And let's start with you, Aaron Miri.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Aaron Miri, Senior Vice President, Chief Digital Information Officer at Baptist Health here in Jacksonville, Florida. Been a long time Hyro customer and looking forward to having a chat today about AI.
Nice. And my game here is that I'm going to ask each of you to also say, what's the one word that comes to your mind when I say digital front door?
I think exciting.
Ooh, okay, nice. Donna, how about you?
So I'm Donna Roach. I am the Chief Information Officer at the University of Utah Health here in Salt Lake City, where today we're probably getting about 10 inches of snow up in Cottonwood Pass. And so it's exciting. It's really our big snowfall today. And my one word would be, and I will explain this later, but is no.
And you'll see why she says no. We've had a lot of discussions around her take on the digital front door angles. We'll talk about it. Thank you, Donna, for joining us. And Ed, a good friend and superstar in healthcare.
Well, I don't know. I'm definitely a friend. I don't know about the other thing, but yeah, my name is Ed Marx. I'm super excited to be with you and to learn actually from the amazing panelists. I'm a longtime CIO, but now started Marx Advisory, and I'm just kind of a single person trying to do what I can to help others. So the one word is digital backdoor. I guess that's 3 words.
That's okay. We'll take it. We'll take it. And John?
Awesome. Well, thank you, Liat, so much for welcoming me and for assembling this terrific group of panelists, which will make my job really easy. I know time is short, so I want to sort of jump right in. So thanks to Hyro for putting all of this together. Donna, let's start with you, since you already gave a compelling and answer to the digital front door question. I know that in the work that I do with clients around the country, you ask 10 people what digital front door means to them, and you get about 15 or 20 different responses. And I think there's a lot of confusion that lies in at the heart of that term. So what does it mean to you, and how does it fit into some of the work that you've done at Utah? And then we'll go around the room.
Yeah, and I appreciate, kind of being able to clarify. So, and I'll start out with, I really don't like the term digital front door. And the reason I don't like it is it offers up, our words have meaning, and it offers up that there's only one way to digitally come in. It's the front door. And I actually looked up, I'm like, so where did front door begin? And it came out of Egypt, where you had to come through a front door in order to enter into different meeting places and your home and stuff. And the reason I don't like it is it gives that impression that there's only one way to enter into our digital strategy, our digital footprint that we're trying to create here in healthcare. I like digital front door, side door, back door. I like the fact that when we look at the continuum of our care, all the digital touch points that the patient and the consumer and even the clinician have access into our system. And so I prefer that continuum and look and touch points rather than thinking and giving people the visual of, oh, it's just one front door. It really, for us here in Utah, it isn't. And we try to break that down into where are all the various ways in which different groups, different facilities, I didn't mention this in my intro, but we are the only academic medical center in a 5-state Mountain West region. So we provide a lot of healthcare to very rural areas, to the states that surround us, and being able to, and I'll use that as one of my examples, being able to give them kind of seamless access and seamless community back here, and then back to their community is really key in offering up a good digital kind of strategy. So.
Yeah, I think oftentimes we try to oversimplify, and this is an example where the oversimplification actually does a disservice because it's trying to explain so much.
Right.
Aaron, let me kick it over to you. You're excited about Digital Front Door and probably all its incarnations, I'm going to guess. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, great question. I respect and appreciate what Donna said. I totally agree. It is a multi-channel, omni-channel type of care journey, but let me give you a little variation on this. So we recently completed a class Arch collaborative assessment on our patients, actually talking to our patients, surveying them, asking them digitally, what do you like, what don't you like? And we compared ourselves to about 5 other institutions that class had done to look at exactly what the digital capabilities are of what patients are asking for. Here's some uniqueness about the Deep South, right? And for those of you from the Deep South or know the Deep South, you can appreciate this. The culture in the Deep South is one of relationship building. And when you look at our patients as they're building relationships with our primary care physicians, they actually want an in-person experience, even if they're digitally native. What does that mean? It means a telehealth encounter that's not so robotic, which is give me your insurance information, let me see you and get off. I want to have a conversation with you. I want to get to know Aaron. Right. And we also found, interestingly, that our pediatric patients and our parents of pediatric patients much more prefer telehealth, as do our elderly population prefer telehealth, than that middle tier of 30 to 50-year-olds who actually want that in-person warm touch. Doesn't mean every time I see you physically, but I feel like you're talking to me as a patient. You know who I am, you know what my worries are, and you've done enough analysis on me that I feel like I have a relationship with you. That's interesting when we correlated this to institutions in California and other more urban areas in Northeast Florida, where this is about the culture. So Digital Front Door to me means tying into also the ethos of your community and offering up modalities that speak back to your patient population. That's great if you get them in quickly and get them out and you're able to turn them around and you have a lower length of stay. But if they actually want that, at the end of the day, we have to be about consumerization first and understanding our patients at a nuanced level beyond maybe what health traditionally has, which is what makes tooling like AI and others so important, because it's the only way we're going to be able to go through the data and get to a product that the population actually wants.
Excellent. Love that sort of additional layer of insight, meeting the physical and the digital, and it's a lot more nuanced than digital first doesn't mean digital only. And
that's right.
Really
I'll add something onto that. Sorry, Ed, I'm going to jump in front of you. But, I think Aaron is spot on. When we introduce like digital tools, so we have a navigation center, and in the past, some of their metrics have been, well, how long is the patient on the call with us, and we want a shorter time because we want to be able to deliver. Well, but in a digital world, and when we serve up information, and now let's say the patient or the community member is called in, we want to have a richer conversation. So that metric of call handle time isn't always as appropriate anymore, right? Now the patient wants to engage, and they're engaging with a person on the other end of the phone, but they have more data served up, and it's one of the tools we're looking at, served up to them so that they can say, hey, while I got you on the phone, I also see that you have a follow-up, or you could be doing this. You could be scheduling your colonoscopy. How about, do you want to do that now? So that metric of call handle all of a sudden gets a little bit longer, but maybe that's not the right metric anymore because we've improved that communication and that interaction. So right on, Aaron, because it's like, one, you got to look at your culture, but you also have to go back and look at, well, the metrics that we used to use may not be the most appropriate metrics that we go forward with. So sorry, Ed.
No. And how do you follow Aaron and Donna, John? That's a tall task. And so, not to repeat anything they said, but maybe a summary is to say, there's nothing sweeter than hearing your own name. And that's proven scientifically through many studies. And it goes back to the heart of personalization. I think that's what Donna and Aaron are pointing out. Whether it's physical, whether it's virtual, people want to know that someone cares about them, especially their care provider. And so if this is another tool we can leverage, then more power to that tool. We should make it as great as we can.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, great way to go. Go ahead, Donna.
And so there's a question in the chat, and I love the point about when can we start getting metrics around conversation richness, which is really key. Isn't that key to AI, right? We use a tool that allows us some of that NLP kind of processing behind the work, behind the stage, not to make it creepy, but to help in understanding when somebody is giving me certain words. Are they words of concern? Are they words of anger? Are they words of, it starts to detect the emotion of what's going on with that patient that better kind of reinforces where we need to serve our community and maybe that patient or that interaction that we're having. So I love the point, whoever brought it up in the chat. It's like, yes, totally agree. And we're very early in that journey. But that's what I think one of the areas we have to focus on.
And let's then pivot to what's going to help us with that journey and starting to get into the AI conversation a little bit. And I think a poll is about to be pushed out to the audience, and here we are. So what excites you the most about the potential for generative AI in healthcare? It's a bit of a leading question. Give this a minute or so for everybody to get some answers in. Here they come. So let the answers keep coming in. I know we have a lot to cover. All of the above, leading the pack with everything else sort of divided up a little bit, with maybe provider burnout trailing behind a little if you don't count all of the above. So Aaron, let's turn to you now. So and talk about artificial intelligence a little bit. Obviously, it's a huge topic. I think it's almost exactly a year now since ChatGPT got onto the market and became the fastest adopted app of all time. I think that's before Threads came on the scene more recently, but pretty close. So it's obviously a huge topic, and it manifests itself in a lot of different ways, with generative AI emerging as a real significant game changer. Can you share some examples of how AI has, and how you foresee it will, really lend itself to efforts around enhancing the digital front door, some of the things that we were talking about before? What are some of the use cases for patient engagement that you're exploring or have put into place, and what are some of the benefits that you see coming out of some of these AI endeavors? And
yeah, so I think
it's a big thing.
So John, the hardest part about this will be keeping this like under 2 minutes because it's a huge topic. So let's take 10 seconds talking about it at a macro level. So AI has been around for a hot minute, right? 50, 60, 70 years plus. And we haven't had the compute power available. Now that we do, we have distributed compute, we can now unlock these large language models and other AI affects that have been around for a long time in theory, and now are able to do it. So from a degree of it, when you look at it from a healthcare perspective, we are regulated by a couple things. Number one, compliance, right? We have regulatory compliance probably as much of, if not more, than the financial institutions. In fact, I was just catching up with the chief AI officer of JP Morgan yesterday, and we were comparing battle wounds. And it's like, look, JP Morgan has the same issues that Baptist Health does in Florida. And that's the reality of it with regulatory scrutiny. In this case, it's medical license scrutiny, licensure issues, and also a wild, wild west in terms of the FTC not being able to moderate some of these consumer apps because they don't have the teeth to it. And Office of Civil Rights doesn't find these organizations to be covered entities, and thus they fall of jurisdiction for HIPAA. So how do we as a health system play in this space? Because we need to, and we must, without overstepping our skis, per se, to use Donna's snow analogy, and then find ourselves face first into the snow. So a couple things. Number one, focus on the administrative. We have doubled down on building AI solutions. We have our own private large language model farm, along with a number of different products in there. So it's not just OpenAI. It could be Bard, it could be others. We've been building solutions rapidly for things like prior authorization. In fact, true story, we've been able to remove and eradicate over 90% of prior auths for imaging because we built a model together with our payers here in the region to just streamline that. Meaning Aaron needs to get a prior authorization for an MRI. Boom, it's done. Outside of some complicated, wonky, 3 insurance plan kind of individual trying to pay cash for a fraction of it, you can prior auth pretty much all of that, right? And so we're down the road now trying to eliminate as much of that as possible, again, with a proprietary LLM that we built. Second thing that we've done, let's give some credit to Hyro here for a second. I was spending over $1 million a year with an external agency just to answer the phones of password resets for my patients who couldn't get into their MyChart. It was ludicrous. We use Hyro, simple AI bot technology that works, to put that in place together with some process improvement. Boom, $1 million returned to the bottom line because we don't have to have that contract anymore. So these digital solutions can be as complicated as creating your own AI algorithm, all the way to using great stuff off the shelf and just configure it when you understand your process to make AI magic happen. Now, AI does not mean Terminator. It does not mean Skynet is out to get you. It does not mean that we're suddenly going to replace people with machines. What it does mean is that we get smarter about the way we deliver care. We get smarter about the way we do operations around delivering care. And 3, we get to know our patients on a didactic very linear level that we did not know before, and start customizing a PI, a personal assistant, personal navigator, personal intelligence, PI, for each individual person. Let me leave you with this thought. What if one day you don't transact with a healthcare system via a website or any other modality, and it's a PI, a personal intelligence app of some sort, customized for Aaron, that's acting like a chat GPT or OpenAI bot would, and that's the way you engage. There's no longer a phone call. There's no longer a website. There's no longer the things we're so custom with the 1.0, 2.0 world of the World Wide Web. Think of it that way, and you begin to understand the power of AI.
Amazing. Donna, take it from there. Where do you see this
kind
thing
of
coming
caught up
in?
with I'm like,
Yeah.
I think we'd have to change the name a little bit here.
We would, yeah.
But anyway,
I'm a marketing engineer. I'm not a marketing person.
It's really, this is one of these areas. It's trying to get your arms around it without trying to control it. And so in a university and in an academic medical center, there are all different avenues. And just even yesterday, our university president introduced a $100 million initiative to fund and look at responsible AI. And from a research side, absolutely, that's a direction we need to go. I will tell you, my focus in healthcare, like Aaron, we've been doing AI for a long time, and it's just kind of come to a head in terms of where can we be more responsible with it? Where can we really drive our strategy? So one of the things we looked at is we have a digital roadmap, and I asked my team, I said, give me the use cases that we're using right now to support our digital roadmap. One of the most amazing ones I think we have worked on with another vendor, with a CT scanning vendor, is as people enter into our ED, again, a front door, right? As they enter in and they're potentially a stroke type situation, the analysis that's done in that CT, if the conditions are met, it automatically calls the stroke team and puts the stroke team at the care of the patient. And I don't mean necessarily that the stroke team gets enabled right at that point of care, because we have a telestroke program. So that stroke team may be calling up into the telestroke, giving advice to one of those other Mountain West region hospitals to say, here's what you need to do. Here are the steps that you need to take. And so we have taken the time frame of knowing that somebody may potentially be having a stroke, shortening it, and really acting upon it very quickly. Because we all know that time matters in the case of a stroke, and what we can do in terms of really taking immediate measures. But there's other things where we've applied AI in terms of just working with Epic. We're an Epic shop, just like Aaron is, and looking at how can we reduce the overhead of messaging that comes through sometimes MyChart messaging to our physician population. So we're trialing out that. But what I love about that work is it's not, the AI doesn't take over. The AI assists the physician. It assists the clinician and looking at kind of reducing the message content, but also assisting with the kind of the messaging back to the patient. So it's all within the control of that physician at the bedside or at, you know, in the office. So just two like quick examples of things that we're doing right now. There's a lot of other things, but like Aaron, it's like, okay, how do you keep it to 2 minutes?
Yeah, and that messaging example is a really interesting one. One, because it's happening in real time right now. We're all witnessing how it's impacting workflows and provider burnout and patient engagement. You know, to Aaron's point earlier, it's a personal relationship at the end of the day. And this is AI really just helping physicians do the job that they want to do, that they signed up for years and years ago in medical school, and actually be able to care for their patients, but being more efficient in it. And to your point, Donna, having the last word, but having help in getting to that last word.
Yeah, and I use two like highly clinical ones. We also have we have a Craig H. Nielsen Rehab Hospital where we have a smart room set up, and we have worked very closely with our Qualtrics vendors to take feedback from the patient and real time be able to make differences. So things as simple as, you know, the patient can control the all elements of the room, and even to the point of sip and puff kind of controls. If the patient doesn't have any kind of capability with their hands or even with the eyes, they can actually do sip and puff. The beauty of this is a patient may see, hey, you know, in this pull down menu of changing my room, this level of control isn't here. Can I add this in? And it actually sends a message over to our IT folks that control it, and that we can have a change made almost immediately, at least within the hour, 2 hours of the patient notifying us and letting us know. And sometimes our people can actually come into the room, work directly with that patient to say, okay, let's make sure we're giving you exactly what you want. So that feedback loop is, you know, can be used in patient experience too. It's not just this high level clinical analysis.
Yeah, and we'll come back to a lot of that in a second, because I think the real world implications of how does operations keep up with AI. It's really hard to do, especially in big, complex medical systems, that operations are slow to adapt and to change. Ed, I understand you have a couple of books in process on AI. Any early thoughts that you can share with the group around things that you've learned in your explorations?
Yeah, you know, I was having dinner last night. I'm in Cleveland right now, and I had dinner last night with all the CIOs and CISOs and CMIO, many of the CMIOs, and that was sort of the table conversation was AI. And one of my co-authors from the Cleveland Clinic was there, and yeah, it was really interesting to hear what everyone is doing and hearing sort of the best practices. And it's really happening all over. And it's just like Donna and Aaron, like off the top of their head, they have all these examples of what their institutions are doing. And that's what I'm seeing. So that's some of the early findings, that we're seeing a lot of activity. And like both Donna and Aaron were alluding to, there's so much, right? And now it's how do you really focus and, you know, make sure you're making a demonstrable difference. And the great thing is that there's actually demonstrable evidence of success already. And you just heard some of that, as opposed to some of the technologies we got hyped about in the past, and I won't name them because some people are still doing some good things with them. But, you know, they were kind of overhyped, and we didn't get much out of it. But this really seems to be taking hold. And that's some of our early findings. We'll get into some more specifics a little bit later, but, you know, at a high level, that's what's going on. It's everyone, and these were our small hospitals too. So last night at our dinner, it wasn't just the big health systems that you would think, but there were some small ones too. Everyone is really engaged. It's cool.
Yeah, that is actually an important point. Is the speed at which this is developing has made what might have been prohibitive technologies accessible to many more types of health systems now, large and small, academic and community, rural and urban, you kind of name it. It runs the gamut a little bit. I'm sure blockchain wasn't one of those technologies that you had on your mind, but there's still potential there, just maybe a little ahead of its time. So anyway, AI clearly, and particularly generative AI, clearly has enormous potential, and you've all spoken really well to all of that, but both for the patient experience as well as for health system operations, clinical and administrative. at the same time, we'll go to the other side of the coin for a second. AI is still fraught with potential risk. And I think we see stuff in the press all the time. You've all experienced it. I'm sure you all have steering committees and executive colleagues who are worried and concerned, and legal departments that are worried and concerned. So what are some of those risks, and what are the unknowns that keep you and your colleagues up at night? Donna, why don't we start with you?
Yeah. So I think, one thing is just inherent bias in the large language models. My friends at Stanford just published an article. I think I printed it out. Whose opinions do large language models reflect? And they did a great job in analyzing and looking at what is the bias, and if you try to do something, how do you can you change the bias? And they found some very interesting things, like if you try to train it too much, it actually creates more bias. So, and like all good academic people, it's like what they kind of refer to at the end or actually ask is just more research needs to be done. It's like, don't just throw it all out, right? Without kind of purposely doing the research to improve upon it. And I mean, that's I love what I love about Stanford, and what we're probably going to do within our own responsible AI is to really look at that. You can't bake in bias. We already know bias is in there, and you have to be very aware of it, and you have to understand how whatever language or whatever the system was learned on and trained on has the inherent bias baked into it. So how do you counteract that, and how do you bring that forward in whether it's clinical decision, whether it's operational decision making, just so that you're aware of it and you're acting upon it. I mean, we all bring bias, and we're human beings. We bring bias to every situation that we're in. I think what we have to really work on is how can we minimize the impact and keep studying it and improving upon the large language models that are out there.
Absolutely. Ed, and the folks that you work with, and maybe even in your dinner last night, what are some of those things that keep people awake?
I think another one is hallucination, right?
Yeah.
We're attributing that word now in our vocabulary to all things AI. And this is where, with confidence, right? That's the most dangerous thing, when someone has so much confidence in what they believe to convince someone of A or B. With confidence, these systems are sometimes off track, off base, and there's no conscious to like help someone reorient themselves. So you have to be really careful. So we have to perfect these language models, as Donna was saying. Aaron alluded to it early in his comments as well. And we really need to put safeguards around them so that we know when there's a hallucination taking place. Because right now, I'm not sure we have 100% confidence, right? So we need both. And the point was made earlier about artificial intelligence. I always called it augmented intelligence. So even in an airplane, as an example, while AI is flying the plane most of the time, there's still that pilot there, and that always gives me great confidence. And I think it's the same. So there's no hallucination that takes place, that the airplane thinks that it's slowly making its way, elevating as opposed to descending. So that's probably the big thing for me, is the hallucination.
Aaron.
I would say this for everybody listening. Healthcare is transacted via trust. Everything at the end of the day boils down to trust. Patient shows up at your front doorstep, trust. Physicians practicing in your health center, you give them credentials, trust them. All these things are trust. AI, to be trusted, you have to be seen. You have to be tangible. I have to understand, what am I doing? What Ed and what Donna are talking about is pulling back the veil and saying, how does this algorithm work, right? Mitigating the hallucinations, mitigating all the trials and tribulations there, and build trust. The biggest thing keeping me up at night right now is a number of folks hiding behind, oh, this is intellectual property, I can't show it to you, or this is under review with the FDA, or this blah, 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 blah. It's all nonsense. Pull back the covers, be upfront, be forthcoming. We'll sign an NDA with you, and let's talk turkey. Because if you expect my physicians and clinicians and practitioners to trust you as an app, as an output, they need to understand what's going into the sausage making. So for all the folks that we are partnering with, just like Donna said, there's specific niche vendors out there to really net you a solution. I guarantee you, I will bet you a steak dinner, they were willing to pull back the veil and show you what's under the covers, because they understand that very important facet that healthcare is transacted by trust. So don't forget that, and everything else around that aspect, that sphere, is what we are now working on regulatory-wise and other.
Yep, and I want to go deeper into sort of that black box concept in a second. First, I think we have another poll coming up, which should come up on the screen in a second. Or not. We'll see. Digital, always exciting. There we go. I knew it was coming. So what steps has your organization taken to ensure the safe and equitable, trusted use of generative AI? And we'll start to tie this question back to sort of the remainder here of our program in the next 15 minutes or so. Enterprise guidelines seem to be the big winner, aside from more than one of the above, which those enterprise guidelines keep sort of dominating the field. So still really mostly at a high level, it looks like, notwithstanding the more than one of the above. So let's start getting into that black box a little bit more, where Aaron sort of led the conversation. What is involved in building transparency and trust? What are like the tangible things that your organizations are doing, or that you want to do in the future as this all evolves? Donna, why don't I go over to you?
Yeah, one of the first things we did, just because we knew it's out there, right? And as the marketing and kind of the outside forces start to enter into the awareness within our academic community, it was really important, I thought, like, let's publish some guidelines. Mm-hmm. And a good friend of mine, Lori at University of Vermont, she had already done something very similar. And I'm like, hey, do you mind sharing? She says, yeah, no worries. And it's just a one pager. And so what we did was we created a one pager to be able to publish out there. They're guidelines, you know. I use the Johnny Depp, these be guidelines. So that's all they are, is a way in which we can work. They're guardrails. It's information to put in people's hands to say, here's what we're working on. Here are resources. But basically, you know, we have certain requirements. We need to protect HIPAA. We need to protect PHI. We need to be in a secure way in which we do this. We need to be ethical about how we approach this. And it's a one pager. It's really interesting to try to write something on a one page. And it was, at the time when I wrote it, it was very healthcare driven. I have a counterpart on the university side who's also the CIO on the university. So together we manage and oversee all of IT. And he looked at it and he said, well, wait a minute, I should do one for the university. And so then when we looked at it, we're like, well, wait a minute, let's just do one guidelines, publish it. There'll be a little bit of overlap, and there'll be certain things, FERPA, in terms of university requirements. So that's, we started with that. And what all that's done really is given us a great conversation starter. It was something that we were able to put in front of our board, in front of our physicians, in front of the university president, and just to show, you know, hey, we're being thoughtful about this. The last thing I want to do here is really squash innovation and squash people's excitement about this. And so that's what those guidelines are about. And really, it's a stepping stone. Will they change? Absolutely. But it was a starting point to get us kind of, you know, our arms around what we're doing.
Yeah, health systems are, by their very nature, risk-averse organizations, for very good reason, right? People's lives are literally at stake, but that does have the counter effect of oftentimes stifling innovation, not
Right.
necessarily at the academic level, but at the actual clinical and practical level. Aaron, I wonder if you can comment some of the work you're doing and your teams are doing around this. The one pager that Donna mentioned is I am a consultant. I spend my life trying to put stuff on one page. It is tough to get these complex concepts across and these guidelines without getting into all sorts of legalese and caveats and all of that I'm sure your legal teams are enthusiastic about. So Aaron, wonder if you can talk about some of the transparency and how you're dealing with it.
Yeah, so exactly what Donna said, she's spot on. It is about governance. It's about explaining to your general body of folks what they can and can't do, what those parameters are. I mean, for example, I know folks on the spectrum that have outright blocked OpenAI and any Bard and all these other tools. And I'm like, you're basically sticking your head in the sand saying it doesn't exist versus tackling this problem up front. So I would say step one is do not stick your head in the sand. Don't be a dodo bird, right? Wake up and deal with this head on. So number two, governance. Very, very, very important. Your physicians and practitioners are at the table with you, even in the early sausage making idea days. Understand what their bugaboos are. Remember this very simple thing, that a crappy process equals a crappy AI product. So you've got to white sheet your processes. So if someone says to you, let's pick on prior auth, because I mentioned earlier that prior authorization for radiology is costing us millions of dollars in overtime. We want to eliminate it. Great. Why? Because I want to reduce overhead and overtime. I want to reduce friction with the patient. I want to be able to increase satisfaction. I want to get more patients in the door. I want to maximize utilization of my systems. Great. List all those out. And then everybody come together. Does your radiologist agree with your rad tech, agree with the operations folks, agree with the finance folks? Do they or do they not? If they do, now you have a worthwhile endeavor to go chase because the why and the there is now blessed, and you're working on the process improvement to then put the AI model on top of. If you don't do all those other steps, you're literally doing the whole field of dreams thing, building it, hoping they will come. Like that's not going to work in life, right? So take a step back, embrace this pragmatically to what Donna was saying, understand and define it very critically, and then move forward. I will also say this, do not believe snake oil. If you cannot actually answer the why behind something, this is for AI, for anything, don't do it. Don't waste your time and waste the dollars because right now when margins are so tight, every single thing you're doing is being scrutinized, and that return on value beyond ROI, that ROV is critical right now more than ever. Otherwise, this will run away from us and be another blockchain on steroids.
Yeah, and that actually hits a little bit on one of the questions in the chat about transparency and vendors specifically, and how curious, Ed, Donna, how when you're looking at vendors or when you're talking, Ed, with health systems about looking at vendors, what are the demands essentially of vendors to open up their black box, knowing that there's NDAs and the risk of, corporate secrets and whatnot, but how do you make your team feel comfortable and your patients feel comfortable?
Yeah, so I'm also on the board of the reason I'm down in Cleveland is I'm on the board of Suma Health, so a really nice health system with a payer in sort of mid Ohio, Akron, Canton area, and this comes up all the time at the board. We have board members, and they're great. So not saying anything negative, but they're not into tech, they're not into the IT, and maybe just peripherally as a board member into healthcare, right? They're great citizens, that are great in banking, which is important, and all the other type of things. So they're always dropping, hey, what are we doing with AI? What are we doing with AI? And our CEO is very, very good because they have a great CIO, Elbridge Locklear, who will be presenting a little bit later. Really good at this. And that is holding vendors accountable. And that Aaron made that point beautifully. So if a vendor's not willing to be transparent, if they're not willing to be honest, if they're not willing to be accountable, don't work with them. Simple as that.
Yep.
Donna, anything to add on that front?
Yeah, no, I mean, I couldn't say it any better. I think vendors are starting to be, I think there's legislation coming, and we are out of the comment period, and I think it will require them somewhat to kind of open up and show us what's going on. But I'm like with Aaron, it's like, pick the right partners who are willing to openly do this without having legislation over their head. And that's a real telling sign that they're willing to partner and willing to be there with you to understand it and to work together. Because it's really, we're not going to solve this alone. And we have to be we have to be collaborative in what we're doing.
Yeah. Let me quickly add, John, two other things I think is important for the listeners to understand. Number one, rework your business associate agreements. Make sure third-party data rights is addressed there, and your data sell-on rights are addressed there, that the data you're putting into any model with a third party cannot just be disclosed or resold or whatever, even de-identified without your explicit permission. Make sure your business associate agreement states that very clearly. In Florida, it's a requirement because we have the Florida Consumer Protection Act, which tells where the data can reside in the United States, et cetera, but not every state has that. So that's number one. Second thing, make sure of, just like what Donna was saying when it comes down to financials, whatever, if it's a startup vendor, I love startups, embrace the concept of splitting house money, meaning, hey, you're going to promise a 7x return on investment, fine. You keep 3 points, I keep 4 points, we call it a day. The better we do together, the better you do financially, the better we do financially. It's house money, we're losing it anyways. If you find vendors that do that technically and on a business terms with you, now you've got the right partner to move forward on, and it's a horse you can bet on without risking your career.
Absolutely. We don't have that much time left. Let's bring us back to the patient and to the digital front door and where the patients are in all this. We've talked a lot about health system governance and transparency and working with clinicians and across domains, all of which are tremendously important. But at the end of the day, we're all in the business of serving patients and keeping them healthy or getting them healthy. AI will obviously take a huge role in that, increasing over time. Where's the transparency with the patient? How do we help patients understand where that's coming in and that they can still trust their provider and their health system, and they know when AI is being involved or not, but what are the parameters around that? I'd love to hear some thoughts about what some of your evolving thinking is on where the consumer fits, where the patient fits. Donna, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so we're even within our digital roadmap, and I loved Aaron kind of and Ed, you did too, that jump from experience, because we're very focused on the total experience. I tell people, if you do something for the physician experience, but it's at the expense of the patient or even at the expense of another employee, you will be very short-lived in your output, but you have to take into account the full total experience. So we have made sure that we're analyzing that and looking at that. So the same tool that does our patient experience does our employee experience, and we meld it together and we look at the data in terms of when we pull a certain lever, how are we doing and what's the impact? But it also comes down to exactly what Aaron was talking about, personalization. So it's that next step. It's like, how do you devise something that is very focused on me versus another individual who is much younger, maybe a male who is looking at and wanting a different level of service. In healthcare, one size does not fit all, and introducing that into a health system, especially in an academic environment, it's a little bit harder just because we're so used to a certain way of kind of approaching things, thinking that, hey, if we build it, they will come kind of mentality. We really have to focus on that personalization and make sure that we are driving our roadmap and we're driving our decisions that impact and look at the full experience, but also take it to a level of it's not a one size fit all, and we're going to have to tweak and make sure that we can do that. We have moved away from kind of my shop, we've moved away from waterfall ways of thinking more to an agile way of thinking. We're early on in our journey, but that's taking us closer and closer to where we need to be to do better improvement of our systems and our deliveries.
Ed, thoughts on bringing the patient in and the trust with them?
Yeah, before there was a Hyro and a Gozio, we were sort of doing our own thing where I came from. And so in 2019, I had something happen to me that just changed me and it helped change our organization, our way of thinking about this. So we do rounding, right? Like every other organization. And formally all the leadership. So like the top 100 leaders of the clinic on a monthly basis do it together. And we pick a different theme. And And in 2019, one particular month, the theme was my chart, was our front door. And we were trying to talk to the patients. That was the theme. So we'd break up, we'd meet together, talk about our digital front door. We'd break up into smaller groups, go do rounding, come back and share our findings, how patients were responding to it, using it, that sort of thing. So the goal was to drive awareness. And you always knock in the room, right? You work with the clinicians and you come in, talk to the patients that are willing to talk with you. And we knocked in this one room, and I turned the corner, and it was a paraplegic. It was a man who had very little in terms of arms and legs, and he had a device in his mouth, like a pencil, like a pen, he was using to try to navigate our digital front door. And I realized, oh my gosh, we have to make this thing way more personal and accessible and leveraging. That's where we started. Voice. We need voice. Oh my gosh, because you always think, oh, people are like me. They're not. And it was profound. I mean, we're all sitting there crying and feeling like, gosh, how do we miss this? Because there's a lot of patients in that situation that, whether they're paraplegic or just out of it in terms of being able to function well with their hands, can't use it. So this whole idea that Donna talked about personalization just really hit home. And we got to be thinking GenAI and using voice and other capabilities.
Excellent. Aaron, anything to add? And actually, as you're adding, let me put another thought into your head too. How do we make sure that health equity is incorporated in this? And Donna brought this up a little bit at the beginning, but AI is, again, fraught. And as we go on this journey, how do we instill confidence in our consumers that we are, in fact, incorporating components to ensure that it's being developed in an equitable and deployed and used in an equitable way?
Absolutely right. And actually, you hit upon the story I was going to tell that I think is incumbent for us to all understand. This is public, so I would encourage you to Google this. Why did Watson fail at MD Anderson Cancer Center? Right? And this is from 2017, 2018. So again, AI has been around for a hot minute, guys. It just became cool in the past year, November 22, with OpenAI and Microsoft. But now, why did it fail? Because number one, that data model they trained Watson on was from a totally different cancer center. It didn't apply to the heuristics of the demographics of Houston, Texas. That's number one. Number two, it was not personalized in a manner that would work with the oncologist searching medical histories, whatnot. It didn't understand the nuances of workflow at MD Anderson. It understood the nuances of workflow at the other cancer center it was trained on, but not at MD Anderson. So what does that tell you? It tells you what Donna and Ed were saying, that AI, while it's portable in terms of platform sophistication, it has to be personalized to your use case. So at the end of the day, when it comes to the patient side of things, I can't stress enough getting to know your patient well, but two, also enriching the data that you have available about your patients, partnering with the various clearinghouses to really understand the nuances of, Aaron, what's my net worth at home? Am I living in a food desert? All these social drivers of health, realize I'm not saying determinants anymore, it's social drivers of health, which is a critical term we need to get adjusted to in our lexicon. The social drivers of health that make up me as a patient, so that those tools and those outcomes match what my experience is. If I'm technology illiterate, which the majority of your population is functioning at an 6th to 8th grade level, I may not understand when you give me some medical jargon asking me, are you clinically obese or whatever that may be, because I'm interpreting that to be something completely negative and destructive versus something partnership. So nuances and change of communication and being able to talk to people where they are and working with them is the only way to get AI, to that word again, be trusted. That is the key. And then last but not least, on an organizational level, we're looking at transparency acts here. We're putting up billboards saying that, hey, your prior authorization for radiology may have been done by an AI bot. If you have questions, here is the person to contact, because realize at Baptist in the Deep South, we want that relationship. So we're looking at all those nuances of being forthcoming and disclosing this, but also giving people an escape lever to say, if you have any question, concern, positive, negative, whatever, here's the human being you can talk to have that conversation with, so it doesn't feel like a stale and robotic experience.
Absolutely. Well, I know we're running up on time, and we could probably spend the next, 6 to 10 years talking about this conversation. But I want to end on this note and this question for each of you. So let's come back together again about a year from now. I'd love to understand what you all envision as a really possible success story for safe, responsible, equitable use of generative AI that really enhances that patient's digital experience overall. I won't use digital front door. But what's a success story that you hope to be able to bring back in about a year from now?
Who are you asking
Anybody
first?
can join. Let's see. Let's start with Ed.
I always enjoyed this because I always got to follow Aaron and Donna. They have such great answers, and I would just I wouldn't have to creative because they already gave you so much good information. Well, I think maybe, I don't know if this is too ambitious, but maybe we don't even use the word AI anymore. It's just part of, like, it's just embedded in everything we do. And you've all heard that argument before about, we call it virtual health or digital health. Will we still call it virtual health in a year? Hopefully not. It's just health.
Right.
And maybe it's with AI too. Like, okay, we get everyone on the bandwagon. Oh, there's these great capabilities and good ways of using it, as has been discussed. But it just becomes a natural fabric of everything we do.
Aaron, what do you think?
I'll give you a specific use story of what I'm looking at. So we're working together with our Wolfson Children's Hospital president. So we're the level 1 trauma center for pediatrics between Atlanta and Orlando, is Wolfson Children's here in Jacksonville. And we want to get in front of the fact that we have so many new families moving to this market with children or about to give birth to children, and these parents have natural concerns. How do we, right now, the common thread is we'll get discussion forums out there. Let the moms talk to each other. Why? Why can't we have some AI solution to help alleviate concerns and point them to the right place? So I'm moving with children. How do you get those next appointments? How do you get scheduled for your shots? How do you transfer your records over here for school? If you're about to have a baby, how do we make sure that it's a safe delivery at one of the Baptist Health hospitals? Or if it does have to go to our NICU, that we do it in a safe and effective manner? Can there not be an AI program or some AI to do that for them? Because that's one of the largest concerns we hear from the community. And this is universal. Everybody has this kind of problem from everywhere I've been. But can we do that specific to our region? So one success criteria will be something, probably not white sheet every process by 1 year from now, but something working along those lines to address this need that's been in the Jacksonville region since the beginning of time.
Awesome. Donna, let's close with you.
So, I'll go a whole different direction because I was thinking, well, what would be really cool to put AI to it? And I think getting rid of email and letting some form of just my own digital assistant, rather than, think of how much time you waste going through email and reviewing and looking. So that I won't go into greater depths. I haven't thought it all through, but it's like, boy, I really would like to get rid of email. And I think AI could honestly help me do that.
Well, that is definitely an optimistic note to end on that I think everybody can get behind and support. So this has been great. I appreciate all the incredible insight. I look forward to spending time in Utah and Florida because it sounds like some great places to be for my health as well as those of your communities. So thank you, Hyro, for hosting the panel and bringing this great group together. And Liat, let me turn it back over to you.
Thanks so much, guys. I want to put all of your advice, put it in a jar and just send it out to all these attendees here. Just like these were golden nuggets. So thank you. And of course, you have about 16 questions in the chat that we don't have time to get to, but I will relay them to you, amazing speakers. And then hopefully at some point we can provide our attendees with some answers. And thank you, John, for leading this awesome conversation. I know you're all so busy, so very much appreciated. We have a small break now to our dear attendees. Get your coffee, get settled. After this, we have Khalid Turk discussing how to really meld AI into the healthcare system, get through the naysayers, the stakeholders, the barriers, and really merge that in now that we learned how to safely implement it. So thanks again, guys, and we hope to see you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Take care.